Stop thinking AI adoption is a technology problem. That's not what's holding your organization back. I'm Ryan Kohler, and this is the future of work with AI, where we explore how artificial intelligence is transforming work. And today we're diving into something most leaders are getting completely wrong. The assumption that if you just give people the right AI tools, they'll figure it out. Here's what's really happening. We've got this lost bell curve in organizations. Small startups with tech-savvy founders are crushing it with AI. Giant corporations are building massive AI infrastructures. But everyone in the middle, your 20-to-1 zero-employee companies, they're stuck in analysis paralysis, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Arturo Ferreira from Upscale AI, and the AI report just dropped some insights that are going to change how you think about this entire transformation. We're talking about why AI isn't a light bulb, it's electricity. Why hallucination is actually a feature, not a bug, and why we're about to see the biggest divide in human capabilities since the invention of writing. Arturo is going to reveal why 43% of HR professionals think AI will take their jobs, while only 8% of doctors and lawyers feel the same way, and why that's completely backwards. He's going to explain why your organization needs to stop trying to hire chief AI officers and start turning your existing team into power users before they get left behind. Plus, we're diving into the 3 levels of AI adoption that separate the winners from the casualties, moving from user to creator of your own tools to creator of tools for others, and why most people are stuck at level 1 while a small group is building armies of AI agents. Ready to understand why the next 5 years are going to look completely different from anything we've experienced? Let's dive in.
And we can kind of kick things off, but I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, like how does an organization make that progression from where they are now, which I believe for the most part is lost. And depending on the size of your organization, like it's probably the lost bell curve is probably like on the small startup side, especially if you're a little techie, the founders have their hands dirty and they're messing around with AI, probably getting decent adoption. And on the big giant side, they're probably like building all kinds of crazy stuff. But the middle of that curve, the average, let's cut it at say 20 employees going up into like 1,000 are generally lost.
Yep.
Like they know they should be doing some AI. They're probably doing some stuff. Almost none of it's working right. I think more of them are getting their head out of the sand, but that doesn't mean they've actually figured out how to run change management and process optimization inside with AI, right? So yeah, let's kick off that with that. So Arturo, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Like, give me a little backstory, like what got you into this? Because I looked at your LinkedIn profile and there is no like, oh, this makes logical sense. He's now like helping organizations with AI.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time, Ryan. It's cool to be here. So to give you the short version, I grew up in Miami, Florida. My, parents were immigrants. And so like their entire lives, education, education, education. So naturally I graduated high school and enlisted in the military. I spent several years, almost a decade in service, in and out of uniform and different like components. And after I got out, I bought a laptop and a camera, and I started to teach myself how to film, edit, produce movies and photography and stuff. I built a media company. I ran that for about 12 years, 15 now, because I still have it. But 3 years ago, I started messing around with like the earliest iterations of generative AI. And it took me maybe 3 minutes to realize what was coming, right?
Right.
It's like ever since I was a kid, you can tell my figurines, I've got a bunch of nerd sci-fi stuff behind me, books and so forth. I've been really interested in futurists, right? Ray Kurzweil, Michio Kaku, and they're nowists, right? Because like all this stuff we grew up with is happening.
Right.
So all of that to say that like I learned how to be an instructor through my time in the military and as a personal trainer while I worked full time in college. I learned how to structure learning and development and how to deliver content running my media business. And then my partner, who founded the original newsletter, brought me on because of my media experience to help him put us all together. And he's the guy that understood the rev model and the business model and all that started kind of the foundation of the newsletter. And from my perspective, teaching people something I do well, and I have for most of my adult life, is teaching them AI is even easier because it's the first technology we've ever developed that you don't have to talk to like it's technology. So it's straightforward, it's easy. Like I tell people, I don't teach anything that's like secret sauce. There's not a whole lot of ways to engage with generative AI. What I teach is just the way to curate it and deliver it in the way that you deal with someone at the gym, right? I don't go to a gym to learn how to run. I go for you to tell me how long and when to stop, right? And
Yeah, and that's probably what you just said is super important and makes total logical sense to me and you, but can get lost on most people. Because I think most people's number one holdback on using AI is they're acting like it's this big technology thing that they need to understand how to use it. Google was the same way. I can't tell you how many people would come to me and ask me a question. I'm like, let me Google that for you. There was a website. I would send them this like super snarky response back with this like, I think it was lmfgfu.com. And you type in a Google search and create a unique URL and send it back to them. And it would literally show the cursor go over to Google and type in exactly what they just told me and come up with the answers and click on an answer. And it's like, here's the answer. You could just, I don't know why you're talking to me. You could have talked to it. But generative AI is that on steroids. Like it is a mental paradigm shift of like, quit typing, use voice, just talk to it the same way you would ask literally the person in your life that you think super smart. Just just think of that and suddenly it responds extremely well. But we are stuck in this paradigm of like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it, right?
that speaks less to technology and more to humans, right? So
Oh, 100%.
yeah, in evolutionary biology, there's a concept of a kludge, right? Kludge, and it's like the idea that that a system will evolve until it no longer has to. And that's the human trade-off, right? The trade-off between energy and time, which is why things like habits and stereotypes form, right? Okay, we got enough of it, 80%, let's move on. And humans are uniquely bad at unlearning a habit as well as starting something new. And that's really where the challenge comes into play and where I come in as a trainer. Again, it's not hard to prompt, it's hard to do things differently, especially if you're like us, kind of at this midpoint in a career where you're like you've done things a certain way for a while. You're like, what do you mean? I just figured this all out. What do you mean I got to start over?
100%. Yeah. I mean, that resistance, I love it because it's like, it's a uniquely human thing that you need to find balance between iteration and innovation and recognizing that getting better and better and better at doing the same thing the same way is iteration. But you also then have to force yourself to do the opposite of going, yeah, but I'm going to do the I actually went to a neuro chiropractor once. And his whole test was like, all right, I need you to move your arms the opposite way while you're walking and walk backwards. And he was testing like you need to look with your left eye, but touch it with your right hand and like kind of forcing us out of that default. Like every morning I go for a walk and I walk up this hill backwards. And it's like resetting some of that neuro stuff. And you're like, why is this so hard? Like, I'm not sure that physically I was designed to only walk forwards, but habitually,
Right,
my subconscious is really great at walking forwards, not backwards, right?
right. No, that's a really good point. Like, it's like one of the recommendations they make to like stave off dementia is like just rearrange your desk once a month, right? Put
Yeah.
things in different places, make your body think, brush your teeth with your left hand. There's all kinds of simple things you can do.
Yeah, but it is, I mean, it seems like strange, but it actually like that thing, the even on the dumb stuff, like walking and brushing your teeth and like retrain some of those same neural pathways as, hey, so you're about ready to use this new technology. And certainly as an employee in an organization right now, most people using AI are using it to replace Google. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to run this search. This is so much better. And like, dude, you're scratching the surface. Like this is a low level request you're making here and probably not even what it's great at right now. That
Right.
then gives you all this, it's hallucinating. And you're like, okay, but why are you asking it for a precise answer? Like you asked it for an exact answer, it gave you back what you asked for. You like, of course it's going to hallucinate, but why aren't you using it for writing marketing? That's all hallucination.
But so that's a good point, an important thing. That's probably one of the first things I teach, like in the first 45 minutes of any 30 minutes of anything that I teach. A hallucination is a feature, not a bug,
Right.
right? The thing is acting in the way it's meant to be acted on. It doesn't know right or wrong, good or bad. It has no context for that. That's us. So hallucination is our perspective for the output. The distinction you make, and I think that the thing that helps people reframe that when they work is you're not using it to find the right answer. Your job is to eliminate the wrong answers because it doesn't think, it's just a really advanced probability engine.
Mm-hmm.
The more you can minimize false positives and true negatives, the more effective you will actually be. And that's where your creative thinking, strategic thinking comes in. So people that are worried that like, oh, it's going to ruin our critical thinking, I disagree. It's actually going to make us more pointed and faster to get to the higher order stuff if you're using it effectively.
Yeah, I think it's every technology. Every technology you could say the same thing with of going, look, if we take the split, the kind of split of the way humans do things, a technology that enables laziness will make lazy people lazier, 100%. But a technology that enables like faster output will take high performers and free up time to do other stuff. And you will see them use it in different ways. And it's why you could say, well, Excel makes it so easy to blah, 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 blah. And you're like, yeah, but 80% of the population sucks at using Excel and they're getting a small amount out of it. And yes, it will do these small things really well. But then you've got some people that use it at a very high level. I think where they're missing the point is less about it's going to make us worse at critical thinking and more of it's going to cause a bigger divide between the lazy user and the power user. Because, it's one thing to say, and you could say that with any software, Google, right? Google has this ability to divide the lazy user from the power user. But what Google doesn't have is the ability for you to then build an agent that replicates that as a power user and be like, yeah, but I'm also like mountain biking today and I have 10 agents working for me doing my job and hey, it's cute that you can use it to run a Google search.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
that I think is the conversation I haven't heard very many people like where it's like, wait a second, these power users are potentially going to own an army of agents that do their work for them, and these weak users are going to be scratching the surface and be kind of left behind.
Yeah. And you look at that, there's any to your point of what you're saying, the different areas. I can't remember, we were already talking about it before. Anyway,
Yeah.
the idea of like the parabolic curve and just standard deviations in general, 68% of people in any of the middle, within one standard deviation of any direction are going to be that middle adoption, right? The distinction here is how quickly this technology allows to ramp up to everything you just said, and how quickly the people that are earlier are going to start to exponentially move away and really pull the average towards the power usage. So I mean, I agree.
Right.
I think early adoption is a massive advantage for generative AI usage and then agentic AI in the next few years.
Yeah. And that's like from a so if we pivot that into organizations, right? Because it's also an interesting thing when you start looking at internal adoption. It's a thing that's not, I mean, I'm sure your feed's filled with the same thing my feed's with, which is a lot of early adopters that are on very small teams that can pivot and adjust and try every new thing under the sun. And, their big problem is, I would say, maybe chasing too many shiny objects instead of actual implementation, but it doesn't matter because they're posting on LinkedIn, they're getting followers or whatever. But for the core organization and employees, most of them are still kind of frozen,
Yeah. So
right?
that speaks to a quote that I did. So we did a podcast episode with Dr. Sam Saman. He authored The Singularity of Hope. Really good follow on LinkedIn. But he, I asked him like, what do you say to people that are like panicking about being replaced? And I refer to this quote almost every time I speak. And he said, AI is not going to take anyone's job. It's going to do the jobs it was always designed to do. The problem is that we have spent decades teaching people to think and act like machines. And that's where the freezing happens, right? It's like, well, what do I do next, right? And you look at our entire schooling, at least in the West, at least in the US, you look at our school system, into our job system, into this corporate hierarchy, and generally speaking, people are trying to just fill their roles, which is reasonable. The problem is the game is getting shaken up significantly. To borrow a term from The Expanse, it's the churn, right? Like
Mhm.
there is something coming and most people aren't equipped. So my role isn't so much teaching you, here's Gen AI. It's, hey, there's a massive shift coming and you got to shake yourself up and just start using the thing.
Yeah, and I think that's, in I've probably had, 2 or 3 thousand HR people who've heard me speak on AI at this point, and I run this kind of poll anywhere type poll with AHA slides, and it's what 3 words come to mind when I say ChatGPT at work, and so that allows open ended, and I'll take that and do a bunch of like, give me the sentiment of sentiment analysis on all those words, and the secondary question is like, tell me how much you use it. Because the worst question to ask anybody is how good are you with ChatGPT? 1 through 10. Because they're all going to over index of how good they are. And then you look at their ChatGPT and you're like, you're a primary kid here. Like this is way. And so instead, ask them what they're using it for or how often they use it or whatever the case may be. But what they use it for is a really good indicator of like, okay, so negative sentiment correlates to a lack of usage. And anybody that uses it more on any, it's kind of like we were talking about Waymo cars, right? The first time you're in a self-driving car, your brain doesn't know what to do with it. Like just the entire experience, it's just shaking everything up. But the more
Mhm.
you're in the car, the more you relax and the more you get used to it and the more you trust it. And then it starts to show you the upsides, right? Oh, well, in this, I can do X, Y, or Z. And generative AI, all my data shows that same thing of if you're afraid of it, the number one thing you should do is learn. But you could say the same like if you're afraid of another culture, show some freaking
Right.
empathy, go spend some time with them, and you'll realize they're just humans, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think the whole like it's we were trained to be machines. I don't know what it's like on the East Coast, but for us, um, there's been over the past maybe like 15 years as I was raising my kids, this new math, old math thing going
Yep.
on, and parents hate new math, and it doesn't make any logical sense to them. And the teachers and the education system did a really poor job of explaining, hey, old math was memorization. That's what a machine does. New math is can you think like through constructively through the problem? The answer doesn't matter as much as how you thought through it, which is honestly like if you want to divide up your great AI users, generative AI, and the low AI users, the low AI users are using it in the same way they did old math. Hey, give
Right.
me the right answer. And the great ones are like, hey, what are the 5 likely outcomes and the probability of these things? It's the same query, the same prompt, just with that little nuance that says, I'm not asking for the right answer. I'm asking for all the answers.
Right. It's a good one. That's a really good. That's a really good distinction. So speaking to the idea of like users in general, I saw a chart somewhere that basically ranked. It was like a survey with like 4,000 people, and it said, you know, who is most fearful of being replaced by AI. And at the top was HR, right? 43% of people in HR were terrified that AI is going to take their job. At the bottom, you had like law and medicine, both of them tied at 8%. What does that make you think? I'm just curious, like, what's your reaction to that statistic? And obviously, there's a bunch in the middle.
Um, I think it's that those on the bottom are saying that my knowledge, I'm making decisions.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm actually, lawyers and medical doctors are saying there's this vast amount of both knowledge and nuance, right? And therefore I'm this valuable part. Now I don't know that they're actually right in the
Okay.
fact that they're safe, right? They're not actually safe, right?
Right.
On the flip side, you have HR, which is super interesting because I don't think they actually believe that they're going to be replaced, but they're being hammered that they're going to be replaced. It's that they don't know how to pivot into more nuanced roles, which we actually need. Try to replace half your workforce with technology and not have an HR person there to keep the pitchforks and torches from coming out.
Right. Right. And I agree. And I fully agree with you. And I
Yeah.
actually think that chart should be reversed because I actually think law and medicine are ripe for automation. Because most of it's pattern recognition, right? Like I don't need to pay $400 an hour to review a contract. My AI will do that in 15 seconds for functionally free. Right. Or they did a study with doctors' diagnoses, and I'm sure doctors are going to come for me for this, but fine.
Yeah.
But like, doctors alone had like a 78% hit rate for accurate diagnoses. Doctors at GPT 94, and then GPT alone is like 96 point something, right? So doctors are skewing down, which makes sense when you think of just like, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but like ego and pride of ownership in general, when you have a highly specialized job that is valued in a society. But the idea, to your point, of HR kind of being in the middle, like I think HR kind of gets pilloried a bit, right? We've all seen The Office and Toby's,
Mhm.
and like the reality is like it's kind of like I think of a John Oliver sketch he did a while ago on infrastructure, right? Like infrastructure, it's like the least sexy thing on a budget because if you do it right, nothing happens.
Right.
And that's kind of what HR is like. If you do HR right, nothing happens, which is a good thing, right? But there's this like disconnect with like, oh, well, you just do HR. It's like, yeah, but you handle the most messy variable in any business, the individual human being, and you really can't automate. Like maybe in 15 years, that's possible. But right now, like we're so far from full true automation. I mean, AIs just want to make you happy. They don't care if they're right. You leave them alone, they're just going to lie
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, I actually think, and you could take that and look at any job under that same kind of paradigm. When you think about like, if the knee jerk reaction as a whole is we're safe, that also generally comes from high ego, high knowledge base, not discounting lawyers and doctors at all.
Sure.
They clearly went to school for a long time. They're super smart at what they do. They also make tons of mistakes, and they have entire classes of insurance for when they screw up.
Yeah.
HR people don't carry insurance for when they screw up. Okay.
Right.
So, like, clearly the stakes are extremely high, which is why doctors and lawyers should recognize that when the stakes are that high, the amount of venture capital that is going to be applied to solve that problem is also going to be extremely high. The
It's a good
average
correlation.
person who walks in and is like, hey, we got this AI, it's going to solve this problem and make it so you don't need an HR person. You're like, have you seen the budget? Like, there's not a lot of lemon squeeze there. They're underfunded as it is. Like,
Right.
you squeeze out all the HR people on earth compared to, say, lawyers and doctors, you didn't save that much money.
Right.
You
Yeah.
you just didn't. Now on the
Yeah.
HR side, I think it's an interesting time in the HR world because I spent like 20 years there of them going, you remember how you said you wanted to be more strategic? Remember how you said you didn't want to be viewed as a cost center, you wanted to be included in more decisions, you wanted to X, Y, and Z, and that you hated the fact that you were just there like punching numbers and building spreadsheets and that kind of stuff. Like, the time has come in the perfect scenario for you to make this jump. Unfortunately, what it will take to make that jump wasn't, demanding your seat at the table. It will be becoming the person who can do that future job, which might look very different from your current job. Oh my gosh, AI can come in and do X, Y, and Z if you, as an HR person, wield it as a magic wand. But that wand's only as good as like the wizard wielding it. So
Hmm.
that switch to like, oh snap, like we have a change management problem. Like right now, for most organizations, and I'd love to hear your opinion on, but I don't believe that we have a generative AI problem per se right now as far as adoption. We have a process automation or a process innovation problem, a change management problem, a how do you get the IT guy and the head of sales together and define what we should build? We have tons of shiny object problems. Like, it's just chaos.
Yep.
There's nobody there uh, guiding the team collaboratively through the chaos to the other side.
Yep.
Is that pretty much what you see as well?
I do. And that's, I think we were speaking on that earlier, the idea that like HR companies, I think the ones that are thinking ahead for the most part are already looking at, okay, what does a chief AI officer look like? What does that position look like? Which I think is not the way to go, right? You spend a ton of money standing up a department for what? Like how many companies stood up an internet department, you know?
Mhm.
And AI is less of a light bulb and it's more electricity. So by upskilling, for instance, your HR professionals, you really start creating somebody who's skilled in adoption, change management, and just human and AI interaction. And that's the key, right? Is as policy starts to be adopted, as laws start to come into play, that's really where the adoption starts to shift. The technology is straightforward. You don't need to be a developer, and that moat is gone. Like I can produce quality stuff in a fraction of the time it takes even a skilled developer to do.
Mhm.
But so therefore, that's not the point. The point is how do we keep the seamless interaction of human and machine moving forward? What I envision in the future is HR managers that are managing individuals with teams of agents within an organization, remaining within the local, state, and federal guidelines and potentially global guidelines for safe and effective AI usage. That's the kind of
Yeah.
framework I would see and why I believe HR is very well positioned to reinvent themselves.
So what do they have to learn as they reinvent? Because to me, that sounds more like operations, like operational management, and like kind of that because it is. I see the same thing of like, hey, this is a very different mindset. Say you're not just about the humans, you're also about the technology because these two things are going to be playing together, not in the same way that you are looking at like are humans adopting Salesforce.
Hmm.
It's not the same feel. This is like, are humans and AI playing nice together in the playground and collaborating together and working as a cohesive unit?
Right. But see, and that's the distinction, right? So VP ops might go in like whenever someone's not playing nice, you don't call ops, you're calling HR, right?
Right.
Let's mediate, let's talk through,
Right.
right? Ops is looking at the entire thing, the entire
Mhm.
organization, AI human interaction is part of that, but there's more to it, right? That's a chunk, but there's more to it. If we're talking about interaction and adherence to policy, that's HR.
Right.
Making sure that people are sticking with it, using it safely, using it correctly, doing meetings, listening sessions, the whole thing that goes back up to ops. That's where it comes in. So are people playing nice? HR. Are people in AI playing nice? HR.
Yeah, I think where you may be or where they may be discounting a little bit of going like, and this is where the tech world always discounts, right? The if you go talk to the average tech person, like at an AI company or a founder in the AI space, they utterly discount, well, two main things. Number one, how difficult it is to actually get adoption inside of an organization. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you do this? Logically, this makes sense. And you're like, have you met middle management? Have you seen how many meetings it takes to have other meetings, right? And regulation. Do you not understand that not everybody works at a startup that is literally crossing their fingers they even exist next week? These are actual real businesses that have been around for 20 years or 50 years and have real clients and have real teams. And like they first decide that they will like exist. Ongoing existence matters, and the inertia of that stuff is there. They make much slower decisions. But I don't think that we've actually talked at all, and that HR has recognized that a whole lot of laws are going to be changing, a whole lot of new compliance issues are going to creep up. The second you hit, I don't know, let's say like 7 to 10% unemployment of white collared workers, like the pitchforks and torches are going to come out with some people who pay taxes on their houses, and
Right.
they're going to demand not low wage, and I love low wage workers and all, but it's not like they get out their pitchforks and torches and politicians listen. But when
Right.
white collar unemployment comes up to a certain threshold and every state starts going, our AI doesn't vote, and these voters are pissed, and they expect us to demand whatever, it is
Right.
going to like throw all kinds of like demands and requirements on top of organizations, which goes back to HR.
hmm And that'll be interesting. I think that mob will be adorable though, because it's going to be less pitchforks and torches and more like LED lights and nine iron.
Mm-hmm.
But your point is taken.
Yeah.
The idea I think there is the time component where I think we're already behind in that regard, man. Like I think AI is already beyond the point that it's self-evident that it's going to take over a lot of high-end white collar data analysis projection stuff. Like it's already being positioned and proliferating like a fungus almost, right? Like like you look at a forest and like the roots are all connected. Like it's already built its colony underground, and it's going to start sprouting up. By the time it becomes a groundswell, enough of a groundswell for white collar taxpayers to be like, hold up, we need something, it's going to be so far ahead. And I am an advocate for that stuff to be in place now, which isn't happening, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, I went through kind of like, let's see, I got into tech, it would have been like '01, right? So this was like Google was finally knocking out Yahoo and Amazon and eBay, and we were building websites like crazy for everybody, and you come in the kind of media and learning type world, and like, but all of these things, adoption created like a public proof.
hmm
Every one of your competitors that adopted a new website like Flash or, oh, we're going mobile or whatever, you could easily go look. So like adoption created proof in the public sphere. And so it was very easy to kind of like get a pulse on the groundswell. AI adoption doesn't. Like a company doesn't have a reason to brag that they just automated their SDR outbound. And
Right.
that is, I think, why it's going to creep up, like what you just described, is because nobody has a reason to, other than AI companies that are selling it.
hmm
Nobody else in corporate America has a reason to brag about how great it is. They actually want to keep it quiet. I think you're going to see in the next year massive NDAs on employees about how AI is being used at work. They'll be like, hey, if you quit here, you can't tell anybody what we're doing with this stuff.
I'll back that.
Yeah,
Yep.
because you're like, hey, this is our secret sauce. Don't we want an extra 6 months to a year before our competitors fall? It might actually drive up some pay and stay just to keep the secrets from leaking out. That hey, by the way, we just automate. We just created 40 customer service agents, gave them all names and LinkedIn profiles, but they're really fake people because we're trying to keep up the appearance that we don't know as much as we know, and we haven't advanced as far as we've advanced with AI.
Yep. Yeah, man. And I really see the same thing with like, like you look at top dog consulting companies. I won't name names, not get in trouble,
Yeah.
but like, you have people at the partner level that are charging 30% premiums on their contracts because they got to make their money, which is fair, right? It's the American dream and capitalism and so
Right.
forth. But I do feel strongly that if you're at work right now and you're worried, like, oh, is AI going to take my job? Like, believe that, like, believe that in yourself. Like, don't believe people at the top and be like, oh, this isn't about replacement, it's about augmenting. It's absolutely about replacement. Like, large companies are looking to shave off the bottom line, and AI is going to shave off a significant amount. Now, the advantage that I think the average person has is AI is a massive equalizer, and it's allowing small companies to punch well above their weight. So this is the time to start, how do I use it, how do I build it? Like my original trainings were all built with like my dad in mind, right? My dad came to the US when he was like 15. He was a short order cook at IHOP and then built his business. Very American dream, successful, right? Like learned English, the whole thing, right? And my dad is 70 years old, right? And he has a ton of experience and, probably still has several ideas based on his background. What he doesn't have is time or energy to like pursue them. So if AI could take 60 or 70% of the low order stuff that like is like a hurdle to like starting a new business, like what could someone like that do? So this is the time to kind of start like pursuing, or at least trying to like war game out, what do I do next? What do the next 30 years of my life look like? Because I think the next 5 to 10 years, things are going to look very different in our world.
Yeah. And I think there's probably like even the whole is it going to take my job argument? Um, well, let's just go with is pointless. Just start with that. Like it's just a pointless argument to have back and forth and spend time online and fighting it, thinking that somehow we're going to get pitchforks and torches to stop it, also pointless. Like somebody else, some politician somewhere, people outside of the average worker can go fight that. Literally, it's a distraction. And so if you want the actual like get pointed forward and get your stick down so that you're gaining some speed, there's a great Amelia Earhart quote. It's like, I always solve problems with the stick forward. And clearly she's a pilot, which basically means like when in doubt, if you're flying a plane, get more speed because you can solve a lot of problems when you have more momentum, right? And so if
Mm-hmm.
you're an employee and you take that same thing, the default thing for humans is to freeze. COVID showed the same thing where it's like, oh, I'll pull the stick back and like, what should I do? It's freaky. And you're like, cool, you just lost all your momentum. What you just did harmed you. And I think that like instinctive, like, should we argue about whether I'm safe or not? Doesn't do any good. So just move forward and go, it's going to change. How's it going to change? One part that you just brought up, smaller organizations will be able to punch above their weight. That's important. Hey, go work for a smaller organization where you have more flexibility of roles. You can get broader with what you do, which means is you're replacing some parts of it. But those specialists that have like gotten in bigger organizations where they're more and more specialized, they got one thing they do. And if that one thing is impacted, they're in trouble. But somebody at a smaller company is broader. I think number two is like visualize if you look at, let's say you're an HR person, you say, look, I'm the solo HR person at this company. And if they need me less, well, that means I'd have a part-time job. Cool. Embrace that. If you were fractional for 5 different employers, you could actually, every person that I know that goes fractional once they get their base makes 2 to 3 times more money by splitting their time among 5 employers. Awesome. Embrace that. Build some agents that help you be a consultant because consulting right now is hot. Like it just is. There's more flexibility. There's less risk. A company hiring a consultant doesn't pay unemployment when they jack them. They don't pay for health care. They don't like it is any time that you see a chaotic environment, those two things during COVID, downgrade to smaller companies. They're faster to recover. They're more innovative. They're more agile and or like go fractional. Like
Yep.
look at what that's like when you work for multiple places. Those two, I'd love to hear if you have something to add to that. But that to me, anybody talks to me about, I'm like, give up the conversation. I don't know why you're arguing this. Like, just move on. Here's the 2 things that you can do: spread out your width so that you can do more stuff, like expand beyond your little role into these other areas, and look at potentially working for multiple employers.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to add. You hit it on the head, and frankly, you answered your first question to me is like, what's the through line of my life?
Yeah.
Like I learned long ago that everything is training for something else if you'll let it be, and you can always find those parallels and say, okay, I can do this. I can do 80% of it, and I'll learn the rest, right? And that's really where AI excels. It allows you to quickly learn the 20% that gives you the 80% return, right? You just really can jump into it now. So like all the fear and like uncertainty around, should I do this? Should I not? Got to let that go. You got to find
Yeah.
the niches and diversify your personal portfolio.
I think it brings us all the way back to the beginning of the conversation because those are like tactics. Hey, this is the tactical stuff I'm going to do. And maybe just above that is the strategy, working for multiple employers, being more wide. It brings you back to the beginning of like, we are habitual creatures. Your habit you formed was, I am an accountant and I'm going to be an accountant for 30 years and then I'm going to retire. And you built that ego. Like that was your character going back to like that was your character in this very long story, epic story, and now your fear is that your character is going to die or that your story is going to end in a different way. But like so reframe and come up with a new character. Like what is the new character that's going to go into the next version of this story that at least gets the very top level of like your paradigm's got to shift.
And you hit it on the nose, and just by virtue of what we're discussing, and to anyone listening, I kind of like I urge you to pay attention to the subject matter, right, that we've discussed, because it's something that I again teach in my courses is if you look at the technology piece of talking about generative AI, it's actually a pretty small sliver. And if you're focusing on the technology quote, it's you're being myopic because the conversation around AI really, or generative AI, really is social, cultural, and even philosophical, right? Like it's like this idea of like, how does it fundamentally transform how we interact with ourselves, with our work, and with the world at large? And that's the big change. That's that. This is that era that we're about to enter and facing is this whole new thing that it's almost like the internet prepared us for, and now it's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it kind of is. I would assume when you guys when you're teaching the organization side, you have this like kind of like, hey, we have our current way of doing things. We could jump up one level and kind of like look at it in more broader terms and look at ways to reimagine a little. But at the top is like, hey, let's get to the first principle of what is going on, and because it's going to take a lot of destruction of old ways to come up with this new recipe. And that you don't get to it like 1% per day. That is
Right.
like a, hey, let's go back, zoom up to the top. If I think honestly, the one that I've been using, there's a interview with it's Reid Hoffman and the Airbnb founders, and he talked about like, hey, let's go up to the top. What's a 10-star experience like? And so you're like removing all the, yeah, but that would be too expensive, or yeah, but we don't have enough people to do that, or yeah, you move all the way up to the top and you're like, what is this core experience? It's not a place to stay. It's an experience of experience in a city, right? Or it's this experience or adventure we're going on. What does that look like at this broad base? Oh, it's X, Y, and Z. Okay, now how would we do that? Given that all of a sudden, the cost of something just went from $10 an hour to like 2 cents an hour. Because in some things, like teaching is a great example. Like we've had all these arguments over class size, right? Of like, oh man, like 30 students is too many for one teacher to handle, yada, yada, yada. Well, what's the problem with that? What would be great? One-on-one. One-on-one attention. Well, why would that be? Well, because the teacher would know about the student and would bring the student's interests and hobbies and lingos into the conversation. But that would be way too expensive. Yeah, but ChatGPT can do that right now for like 2 cents an interaction. And suddenly you go, well, that would actually be superior. One-on-one interaction where your teacher knows intimately you and responds using your lingo. That's actually a totally different way to think about it. But teachers would need to become managers of AI tutors.
Right. Which
But
is really
yeah,
any organization becoming managers
100%.
of AI. Like that, you are managing now, and the pyramid widens, the hierarchy widens, the ability to do base level stuff widens, and we all kind of move up a notch. But we have to do it. Like,
I think the problems. So I guess where would you say I think middle managers are going to be like rough. I think a lot of middle
middle
management.
and up.
Yeah, right.
Middle and up, because like to your point, using the analogy of like the hero journey that we all create in our own minds, and like this is me and my character.
Mhm.
if you extrapolate that to somebody even at C-suite level or founder level, that's not just their character, it's whatever they've built, whatever they've created. There's a pride of ownership that's extremely hard to let go, right? You watch any episode of Shark Tank and people start turning down deals over 2%. It's like, well, great, 25% of zero is zero.
Right.
Why are you saying no? You're about to get like, like this effect, but whatever. The point is that like you extrapolate to this like ego and need to like attach yourself to your work. Whereas if you just took a step back and say, all right, what serves, what doesn't, right? And maybe a little Buddhist for too many people, but the reality is like that's it. It's that philosophical mentality of what no longer serves us just holds us back. So let's move on with it. And I think that's that big difference where, I think there's a balance between innovation and classic kind of experience where you do have boots on the ground that a lot of innovators and tech people lose. It's like, why don't you just? It's like, well, because life is hard and I have
Right.
people to pay for, right?
Mhm.
And the other side is like, well, I could never do that. It's like, but you could be creative. As someone that ran a media company, I ran into it regularly. People are like, well, I'm not creative. It's like, you are. We're all creative. It doesn't mean art. I'm a terrible sketch art. Like, I can't draw
Right.
for the life of me, but I know I'm creative, right? So what ways are we creative and how does AI allow you to start doing it faster and better than before?
Yeah, I think you go back to that, and I 100% am with you on that. And that's part of like when I'm teaching AI, that's usually where I'm getting to is like, you need to move, and I would say this to everybody, but, or the organization, you need to move your team from being users to being creators of their own tools, to being creators of tools for other people, because there is something that unlocks when you suddenly, it's kind of like learning something is different than teaching it.
Mhm.
Teaching it forces you to learn it in a different way because you're trying to rephrase it for somebody else to consume, right? And so that same thing of going, okay, cool, you're just a user of ChatGPT, but it actually enabled you to create your own tools. And that unlocks this thing of like, oh, I'm not dependent on people building me stuff. And when you get to the third level where you're like, I can create tools for other people, or I can create effectively agents that do stuff that I'm commanding, it opens you up to go, oh, all humans have this potential. It's just trapped inside of us when we were told that artists have talent from God. It's in their DNA,
Mhm.
not creatives become creative by experimentation and curiosity and testing,
Right.
right?
Right. Or
Because most,
actively beaten out of us, right? Like,
yeah,
no, don't do that. Sit still and memorize this. And now do this. This is your job. Don't meander out of that lane, and this being taught how to act like a machine.
yeah, I think what's going to probably be the biggest aha in the next 5 years, and I'd love to hear you on this, is I think we're going to see all these underperforming high school kids that suddenly come into. We saw the same thing with the internet when all the programmers suddenly became gods. And it was like, wait a second, the high school football doesn't matter anymore. These kids who are goofing around with computers suddenly like own the world.
Right.
Like, what's that about? I think we're gonna see that same thing. The underperformers in school who struggled with this, like, I don't get why you want me to do this. You haven't told me what's in it for me. And or even worse, the ones that found creative hacks to do the
Right.
minimum,
Right.
to get not
Shortcuts,
be
the
in trouble.
kludge.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
We have finite time and energy, and nobody wants to be like pigeonholed. And I will speak for the delegation of underperforming students, right?
yeah,
Like I was a C student, but I did well. Like I got like a 1500 on my SAT, or whatever that meant back then.
right,
And I graduated like a 2.8 GPA from like a prestigious school, like this all boys school, which was a great experience, right? But it was that. It was like this idea like we have to sit and we have to learn. And it's absurd. Like we learn better when we move anyway. Now generative AI can run around and like just listen to stuff and ask clarifying questions and really hone in on everything. Like the knowledge has been there, right? The last 15 years of internet have really consolidated human knowledge. YouTube, Khan Academy, take your pick, right? It's out there and most of it is free. Most or all of it is free. You can learn anything if you look
right,
for it online, right? The difference with generative AI is the accessibility and the curation. And that's the level up where it's like now I can get it in outline format with a timetable of when to do it. I can get review questions asked to me right there. I can get tested on my knowledge and really let it sink in and just go. And the
right.
best example I have in my life is watching my little kids at Montessori school learn at their own pace.
Mhm.
We're about to enter, I hope, like a new era of like adult Montessori education where we can all just be trusted to like learn and be adults in the room and not have to punch a freaking card at 9 a.m. I don't care if you're here. Are you producing effective results?
Right.
Great. Do it from the beach or the mountain. I don't care.
So how do you kind of get people to that point where they get to a new level of comfort with generative AI?
The simplest, like I can give like all kinds of tips and tricks and this and like practicing. The simplest thing I tell everyone is wherever right now your icon on your phone is for your web browser, whether that's Edge or Chrome or Safari or whatever, take it, get rid of it, move it somewhere else in your phone, and put whatever your large language model is.
Yep.
ChatGPT, Anthropic, Copilot, whatever. Put that icon where your internet browser
Yeah,
was.
for those of you who don't see it, look on the bottom right of my phone. There's Claude and ChatGPT where my iMessage and my phone is. Right, that bottom right corner is instinct. Unless you're left-handed, then it would be your bottom. But that bottom right corner icon is your default, and you move it to there. I 100% agree with that. I would add to it number two, use it for crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so for instance, like, yeah, because like the whole using it at work comes with this like high consequence, right? Use it for shit that doesn't matter. Use it with your kids, write a story with your kids, but use it at its extreme in the most creative ways. So, for
Yes.
instance, I have a folder, like a little project folder, and it's got, I think, 20 hours of my like therapy sessions. So I did a bunch of EMDR and IFS therapy, and I recorded them all, not without my therapist knowing it. I'm like, yeah, I just dropped Otter and recorded and transcribed all my therapy sessions. And then I have an interview with my mom before she passed away that somebody did in her college or in her nursing home. And those are in a project folder, right? And so when I then go travel, I was just in San Francisco, I travel with that. I'll just fire it open and be like, hey, so today we're doing X, Y, and Z with my kids and we're looking at whatever. What would my mom think of that? Like, why does this place matter to me? Like why? And so I'll start having this kind of back and forth conversation with ChatGPT while we're out just, hey, write a blog post about this. Hey, write a letter from my mom telling me about this place. Like, but it's very creative in nature, but very personal because framing in who's talking matters. Like we
Mhm.
we as humans, if you don't get this yet, the sales tactic is, or marketing tactic is, if I frame in who this is from, it changes the way you receive it. That's why Mother's Day commercials land different than, say, Super Bowl commercials, right? Because they
Mhm.
frame it like this is a message from your mom. And so you read it with that context, and the back of your head is like, oh, I love my mom. And so the message lands different. Well, you could trick yourself in ChatGPT in the same way. That's like, write this from my mom, and suddenly I'll listen to it in a different way than if ChatGPT is telling me about, the Golden Gate Bridge, right? And so, but I use it in these like hyper crib. Now write a story and include my three kids and some magical monster over here and like give it a voice and like, let's have it talk. Those things bring out this creativity, but in a low risk situation. Nobody cares if it's right or wrong, so I can be as creative as I want.
Right. Yeah, the low risk is good. It's so to that I'll add a little more. So I would say use it in low risk or with something that you are familiar with, right? So you know what a false positive looks like, and that will help you understand and see what the limitations are. Because you won't break it, you can push it to lie pretty
Right.
easily. But if you're able to either do it for low stakes stuff that doesn't matter and just kind of fun, or for stuff that you know well, those are the two best areas to gain practice.
Yeah, because and just push those extremes. Like this is not a one and done. This is not a request. This is a conversation. Act like you're having a conversation. Push it out there to an extreme of like, hey, take the opposing view on this. Like that would be my third one. Like, don't ask for precision. Like,
Right.
ask for probabilities, ask for opposing views, like bring in other people. Like, hey, what would Steve Jobs think about this? What would Elon Musk think about this? Like, how would a 19th century philosopher think about what's going on with X, Y, and Z? Like that, forcing it, bring in characters from a TV show. Like, it doesn't freaking matter, but that like expansion of will suddenly get you to a point of going, holy crap, I have Nick from New Girl and he's teaching me about the Golden Gate Bridge and like, but he knows about my life. And it suddenly click. It's like, wait a second, this isn't an efficiency gain we're talking about. This is a deep personalization tool. And once you realize that the future looks hyper personalized, I'm going to read a book that was rewritten just for me based off my life experience, based off the author's thoughts, not I'm going to read the same book as everybody else. It will open up oh, there's a lot of work to be done. Not a little. There's a lot of work to be done when we're doing deep personalization.
Right. Yeah, and that's that gold standard. No, you're head on as far as like just getting it done. I think that's where the practice comes in. That's where the next stage of our integration and adoption comes into play. And there was one more thing I was going to say, and that slipped my mind because I was like engrossed in what you just said. Anyway, I'm sure it'll come to me.
Just think about, I think that like there's probably a handful of movies. Minority Report's a good one where Tom Cruise walks in and it scans his eyes, but thinks it's somebody else and all the ads change.
Right.
I think those are some
That's
of the
our world already.
Yeah, that is our world. We just aren't, it's showing up in a feed and it's not saying your name.
Oh, sure.
They
That's a
could.
good point. Yes.
They could 100% go there. They're just like, you're not quite enough consumers haven't embraced that it's better for them to admit how they're targeting you, to be like, hey, Arturo, thanks for coming in. Last time you were here, we recorded that you liked X, Y, and Z. And so because of that, we've already placed your order and it's sitting at the counter. And we're just not ready to get from I think we're getting close on giving up our privacy, where we tip to go, it's so great that my McDonald's order was sitting here when I walked in. This is awesome.
Right.
Like, I don't want to talk to a kiosk. You should know. You should know I'm walking in here and place my order.
Right.
But yeah, I think the whole calling you by name, letting you know why we know everything about you, is still a little spooky to a group of people.
Well, certainly to the West, right? I do think to a certain extent, more other cultures are more open, like more collectivist and, more even family oriented, right? But even just like community or culturally like collectivist, I think they're more prepared for something like that. We are, we live in a world, particularly in the US, above most other Western nations. There is a massive like push in like part of our core identity is rugged individualism, right? Which made us like uniquely unsuited to handle something like a pandemic, right?
Right.
I think that's going to be a massive rub. This idea, like, but my freedoms and stuff, which are important, but to what cost? At what cost of innovation does your freedom kind of like come into play? And sorry, that's a separate thought, but I just remember what I was saying. So we're talking about usage, we're talking about like pushing it forward. One pushback I get on this regularly, and I'm sure you've heard it, is the energy usage of AI, right? And for those of you that are like ethically like, well, no, it uses too much energy. Like, I think it's worth framing. Number one, AI uses about 25% of the yearly energy as air conditioning, which is relevant because we were just talking about how hot it is in our respective cities, right? But even then, like, just look up how much carbon emission comes from a steak relative to how many prompts. So like if you were to give up one steak a month, that buys you like a couple of hundred or thousand prompts. I don't remember the exact number, but it is worth noting that out of context, AI uses too much energy. Within context, not really. And it's the first and possibly only technology we've ever created that has the potential to have that energy usage be an investment in its own efficiency, right? At some point, there is an inflection point that AI will make itself more energy efficient and more effective. So it's just to keep in mind as someone who believes in climate change, has little kids, wants to leave a better world for my kids, but I'm also I'm very bullish and optimistic on the long-term prospects of what AI can represent for our future.
Yeah, I would say 100% I agree with you on that. And I would take it even one step further of it of going, if you want to drive true innovation in an area, let's say nuclear energy, you want clean, like nano nuclear energy, then just take and increase the demand by say 5 or 10x. Because if demand is increasing along a slope, and it's just kind of like iterating, then we're going to iteratively provide technology. But when you jack up the demand to that level, it generally will change the cost profile and investment will switch. So like for me and ChatGPT mapped out all the nano nuke like stocks to invest in like a year ago. They're jamming right now because those AI companies are going to have to solve the power problem of their consumption in one way or another because their data centers are so big and sucking so much energy, but because it's worth so much money, they will invest in it. And so sometimes it's kind of there was a story about, I'm trying to remember the book, where the boss was like, "Hey, we're trying to get our shipments on time." And every time like they would delay their shipments, and he's like, "I'm just going to commit that to our customers that anytime our shipment is 1 minute late, it's free." And so he set this crazy, outrageous expectation. And what happened was the teams raised the boat. They're like, "Oh crap, I guess we better solve for this," because he took what was a small problem, made it a huge problem. And so the desire to solve it became bigger. Now, in the dip, there's more pain, and you have to trust that that's what happens. But that's what happens every single time. Look at innovation during war versus innovation during peace. When the risk profile goes up, suddenly we have AI flying drones, and we have like the Manhattan Project, and we have like, think about how much flight progressed during World War II.
Right.
The risk profile went up, and so we solved for it. But before, when the risk profile was just like iteratively, our investment was lower. And so I think what you'll see is a mix of that, of both like, hey, the risk profile is so high, we got to solve for this, and the potential earning is so high that we will solve for it. But also, back to your point, the very tool that's consuming energy has the ability to amplify our ability to solve the problem. Like it just does. And so it is the perfect world. It just will be like, will the public trust for maybe say like 5 years that like this is how like supply and demand works, and this is how profit motive works, that the AI companies will want the profit and they'll figure out how to solve the electricity problem.
And the question isn't necessarily will the public trust, but which public will trust? Which one? Because whoever trusts first is going to reap massive benefits.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't think, and it's not like they can say no.
A good point.
Like it's going to happen.
Yeah,
you can come back to this video in 5 years and realize that all the pitchforks and torches did nothing to stop progression, because it's going to happen. But also like you're going to have new problems and new solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's to hoping that in my lifetime, I get to watch the start of a Dyson sphere. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Or like a colony on Mars. Like super excited about that one. Like, yeah. So Arturo, this was amazing, man. Loved every minute of it. Thanks so much. I'm sure I'll have you back in the future, but thanks a ton.
That'd be great, man. I learned a lot, man. I appreciate your time and your intellect, man. All right, it was good connecting.
Man, Arturo just laid out the roadmap for surviving the AI transformation. And if you're not taking notes, you're missing the point entirely. Here are the 3 biggest takeaways. First, stop using AI like it's Google. You're asking for the wrong answer instead of asking it to eliminate wrong answers. Second, the divide between power users and basic users is going to be exponential, not gradual, and if you're not actively moving from user to creator right now, you're falling behind fast. And third, this isn't a technology adoption problem, it's a change management problem that requires treating AI like electricity, not a light bulb. Arturo is doing incredible work at Upscale AI, helping organizations navigate this transformation through practical audits and training that actually stick. You can find him through the AI Report newsletter. 400, 0 subscribers, can't be wrong about the quality of insights they're delivering. What hit me hardest was Arturo's point about moving your phone's browser icon and replacing it with ChatGPT. That bottom right corner is your instinct zone. And if you're not making AI your instinct, you're training yourself to stay in the old paradigm while everyone else is building the new one. If this episode made you realize you're still thinking about AI as a search engine instead of a creative partner, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who's stuck in the "but what if it takes my job" mindset. Drop a comment and tell us, are you a user, a creator, or a creator for others? Thanks for listening, and remember, AI isn't going to replace you, but someone using AI as a creative multiplier absolutely will. The question is, which person are you going to be? I'll see you next time on The Future of Work with AI.